This conference will now be recorded.
So we have discussed update command, insert command, and how many ways we can insert the data into a table. We discussed that. And also what is the use of union operator and how to insert the data into a table using union operator. We discussed that part. And how to change the column values using update command we discussed. Now next is delete command. So delete command, before going for this delete command, so this there is one important command, so which we use this in advanced SQL. Okay, so programming SQL. So let me take employee table. Okay, so let me take an employee table. I want to create a new table according to this employee table structure, and at the same time I want to copy this employee table data into the new table. Okay, so using the same command, I want to create a new table according to employee table data structure and copy this employee table data into the new table. Okay, so for that we use a command called select. So select star into, so this is the command, select star into temp table. That is my new table. We don't have any table and we don't have any such type of okay. Let me name this. So T table, and if you observe, there is no such type of table in the database. So from employee. So this is the command to create a new table according to employee table structure and copy this employee table data into this new table. Okay, at the same time, let me select this and execute it. And can you see that? So 8 rows empty. Okay, now when you refresh the data table folder, you will find that temp table. Sorry, it is. Can you see that?
Yeah.
So I got the. Now, if you observe the structure, it will be same. Okay, and the data. So whatever the data we have in the employee table. Okay, so just I copied that employee table data into this new table, and this command we regularly used in programming SQL. Okay, so that means advanced SQL. There we have to whenever you want to perform some operations on the data, so we maintain the data in a temporary table. Okay, by fetching it from the base table. So we use this command for that. Okay, in that we use this command. So this is very important. Now, now what I do here, let us discuss about delete and truncate. So delete command. So delete command. So I think already we discussed. So delete command, it performs its operation on the data row by row basis. Okay, so that means it performs its operation on the table row by row basis. So it will access a row, and whatever the condition you want to apply on the row to delete the data, okay, it applies that condition on that and deletes that. If the row satisfies the, that means if the data satisfies the condition, so that will be deleted from the table. So that means when you want to perform or when you want to delete the data row by row basis, we go for the delete command. Whereas the truncate command, it performs its operation on the entire table. Okay, it performs its operation on the entire table, not in a single record. So that's why when you apply, that means when you perform this truncate on a table, it deletes everything from the table. Okay, so that's why truncate command is a little bit faster compared to delete command. So because delete command has to check every row, each row to delete the data. Okay, whereas the truncate command, so it performs its operation on the entire table at a time. So it deletes everything from the table within a fraction of a second. So that is the difference here. Let's see that. Delete from temp table. Okay, so when you execute this command, it deletes everything from the table, but it deletes the data row by row basis. Okay, so that's why. So delete command is a little bit slower compared to truncate command. Okay, so performance wise. Now what I do, I don't want to delete everything from the table. I want to delete a specific data. Okay, so where gender is equal to male. So that is my condition. I want to delete all the records having gender male. Okay, so let me select this and execute it. So 4 rows affected, and let me select the data from the table. Select star from table. Can you execute that? And can you see that? So define any records having gender male. So everything we deleted from the table. Okay, so that is a delete command. And see, we didn't delete everything. Okay, just based on a condition. That means the data which satisfies the condition. So that data will be deleted from the table. So using delete command. If you want to delete everything from the table, just use the truncate command. So truncate table employee. Okay, so let me select this and execute it. Sorry. Let me execute this, and you can see command completed successful. And when you select the data from the table, define any data. So everything got deleted from the table. Okay, so that's the concept. So that is the truncate command. So that's the difference between delete and truncate command. Okay. So any questions, please?
No.
So with this, we completed DML commands, and next is TCL commands. I told you, right? So when you want to execute a group of commands as a single unit, so we execute them under the transaction. And so whenever you want to execute a group of commands, okay, under the transaction, we use a command called begin transaction. So begin transaction. Okay. So now what I want to do is I want to delete the data from the employee table. So delete from employee where gender is equal to male. So this is the command I want to execute. So I don't want to execute, okay, directly. I want to execute that command under the transaction. Okay, so this is incomplete actually. Okay, so let me execute this under the transaction. Let me execute both begin transaction, delete from employee where gender is equal to male. Let me execute that. And can you see? So 4 rows affected. Okay, so 4 rows affected. Now what I do, let me select the data from the table. Select start from employee. And can you see? So you don't find the records having gender male. Now my scenario is whatever the data I deleted, okay, I want the data back. Okay, so whatever the data I deleted based on the condition, I want that data back. So that means we want that data back means we have to revert the query execution. Okay, we have to revert that delete command execution. So to revert that query execution, so we use a command called rollback, and the rollback should be executed along with the begin transaction. So now this is complete transaction. So we call this as a complete transaction. Okay. So without rollback or without commit, so the transaction will be incomplete. So now it is complete. Now what I'm doing here, so whatever the data I deleted, I want to get that data back. Okay. So for that, we need to revert the query execution. To revert the query execution, so we use the rollback. Let me select this and execute it. So now let me select the data from the table. So did I get the data? Okay. So
What was the
persist.
difference that you were saying about TLC command when you started between TLC and the DML commands?
So DML commands, they are used to perform whenever you want to perform some operations on the data, we go for the DML. So insert, update, and delete. Okay. The
Okay.
TCL commands means transaction control language commands means when you want to execute a group of commands as a single unit. Okay. So we go for the transaction. If any of the commands fail, that means in the group, if any of the command fail, so the entire group will get failed.
Okay.
So that means we execute them as a group. So to execute a group of commands, that means a group of commands as a group, as a single unit, we place that under the transaction. So this is very important when we go for advanced SQL. Okay. So here I want to explain rollback and commit. So that I just took that example. I deleted the data from the table employee, and if you want, and I'm executing that command on the begin transaction. If you want the data back, so we use the rollback.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the concept. Just a second. Now, what I want to do here is whatever the transaction, whatever the command I'm executing, okay, I want to make it permanent. Okay, for example, I'm deleting the data from the employee table. I want to make it permanent. I want to delete the data permanently from the table. Okay, so for that we use commit transaction. So commit means when you want to execute that command permanently. Okay, so we use that commit. Now let me execute this. So for rows affected, let me select the data from the table employee, and you don't find the records having gender male, you'll find the records having gender female only. Now what I do, let me try to revert that query execution, and let me try to get that data back. Okay, so to get the data back, we need to revert the query execution. To revert the query execution, we have to use the rollback command. So let me select this next. Okay, and let me select the data from the table employee. And did I get that?
No.
So so I deleted the data permanently from the table. Okay, so I deleted the data permanently from the table. So that's the concept. So these are about the commands what we have in the SQL Server. So these are only basics actually. Okay, so if you actually discuss these transactions in detail in the advanced SQL. Okay, so in the advanced SQL, we regularly use this begin transaction, commit and rollback, the advanced SQL. So for Tableau, it is not important for Tableau. Okay, so it is we don't use any such type of commands in the Tableau. Okay, so next concept is constraints. So these are very important constraints. So constraints are nothing but they are rules or restrictions which we assign on the columns to restrict the unwanted data going into a column. Okay, so whenever you want to restrict the unnecessary data going into a column, okay, we assign the constraints on that column. So constraints are nothing but they are a set of rules or restrictions. which restrict the unnecessary data going to your column. Let us see that. Set of rules. Okay, so that's the definition. And here we have two categories here: column level constraints and table level constraints. Okay, so these are the two categories we have under these constraints. I will explain what is the column level and table level. So under the column level category, we have constraints like not null constraint, default constraint, unique key constraint, and check constraint. Okay, so these are the constraints under the column level category. Under the table level category, we have constraints like primary key constraint and foreign key constraint. Okay, so these are the types of constraints we have, and these are the two categories: column level constraint, table level constraints. Okay, so column level constraint means when you assign this constraint on any column, okay, it will perform its operation only on the individual column data. Okay, so and the table level means when you assign this constraint on any column, okay, it affects the that row, that entire row, not a single column value. It affects the entire row. Okay, so that is the table level constraints. So normally we can have only one primary key constraint per table, but we can have multiple foreign keys. But this affects the entire table data, not a single column values, entire row. Whereas the column level constraints, these constraints will affect or perform its operation on the column data, on a single column data. It doesn't affect other column values. Okay, that's the difference here. Now let us see what is this null constraint, default and unique, and check. Let me drop the employee table. I want to create the table assigning constraints on the columns. Okay, so I'm creating it. So create table employee ID integer, and I want to assign not null constraint on the employee ID. So not null. So employee name. So worker 50. Salary, money, age, integer, and I want not null constraint on the age also. Okay, so not null, gender, macro 50. Supervisor, care of 6, department ID, integer. So if you observe, so assign not null constraint on employee ID and assign not null constraint on age. Okay, so that because if you so assign not null constraint employee, right? So it affects that employee ID column data only. It doesn't affect any other column values. Okay, so and here I want the same functionality on age column. So we assign that constraint separately on the age column. Okay, let me select this and execute it. And can you see? So command completed successful. Now let me refresh the table folder. And when you expand the table, when you expand employee table, when I expand the column folder, and can you see that? Say employee integer not null. Okay, age integer not null. Clear? On other columns, you'll find the null constraint. Is it clear? Any questions? So now let us, whenever you want to check the constraint functionality, we have to insert the data into the table. Okay. Now I want to check the not null constraint functionality. So let's see, to check the constraint and not null constraint, okay, functionality. So right click on the employee table. So go to edit top 200 rows. And just click the IDs. Okay. So now for the second row, I don't want to give any value for employee ID. Okay. So for the second row, I don't want to give any value for employee ID. Normally, if you don't give a value for any columns, it automatically takes the null, right? Now let's see. And can you see that? We got an error. So what is the error? So cannot insert the value null into the column employee ID. Okay. The column doesn't allow nulls, insert failed. So it is not allowing the nulls because of not null constraint on the employee ID column. Okay. So that is the functionality of a not null constraint. So not null constraint doesn't allow the null values into a column. Okay. So when you are trying to give a null value for a column, it restricts that null value. Clear? So that is the concept. So you have to give a valid value, and even it consider duplicate also. Okay. It will consider it will allow the duplicate data, but doesn't allow the null value. So that is not null constraint. Now let me execute this, and can you see the record is correct? Okay. So that's the concept. So clear? Any questions? So simple. That is a not null constraint. So when you want to restrict the null value going to a column, so we use the not null constraint. Okay. So now let us assume we don't want that not null constraint on the employee ID. Okay. We don't want that not null constraint on the employee ID. I want to restrict that. So sorry, I don't want the not null constraint employee ID. So I want to change that to null. That means I want to allow the null values in the employee ID column if any user is trying to give. So we can't drop not null constraint or null constraint. So we can change not null to null and null to not null. That's it. We can't drop them. If you don't want the not null constraint on employee ID, so we have to change that to null. Okay. So here constraint is a column property, right? So constraint is also a column property. So when you want to change the column property, we have to alter the table. So alter table employee add constraint so constraint name. So that is a column property, right? Sorry. So alter table employee, alter column name is the employee ID, and data type is integer, and then constraint is null. So that's the command. Okay. So when you want to change the constraint from not null to null, or null to not null, so we have to use the alter command. We need to alter the table, and we have to alter the column, and we have to assign the null. Let me select this and exit. So can you see that? So command completed successful. And when you refresh the column folder, so you don't find the not null, you'll find the null constraint. Okay. So let me try to insert the data into the employee ID. So I'm not giving any value for employee ID column, the third record. And can you see that? It accepted that because we don't have any not null constraint on that. Let me select the data from the table. Select and can you see that?
Yeah.
So you can see that null constraint. Okay. So that's the concept. So any questions? So next is default constraint. So default constraint means when you want to that means here we are not allowing null values into your column, right, using not null. When you want to replace an empty space or null value with a definite value, with a specific value, we go for the default constraint. Okay, if you assign this default constraint on any column, okay, so if you don't give a value for that column, so this default constraint automatically replaces that empty space or a null value with a definite value. Okay, so let's see how to assign this. So here, let me take the same command. Let me take the same query here. And so I want to assign this default constraint on the salary column. Can you see the salary column? So if any user don't give a value for salary column, so that empty space should be replaced with a definite value. So I want to assign this default constraint on the salary column. So let me take a constraint default, and the value is 30,000. Okay, the value is 30,000. That means if you don't give any value for salary column, so that empty space should be replaced with the 30,000. Okay, now let me select this and execute. So this is one way. I'm not executing that. This is one way, and we can do this another way also. So actually we have to give a name to a constraint. Okay, so we have to give a name to a constraint. If we don't give a name to a constraint, the query processor automatically generates a name to a constraint. Automatically it generates a name. Okay, so let's see, let us see that. And if you want to give a name, so we have to use other command. Let me take the same command, and at the time of creating a table, I want to give a name to a constraint. Okay, so here we use the syntax constraint. So just constraint, I'm just giving some random name, and the default keyword that it asks. Okay, so that's the syntax. Okay, so if you observe the first syntax, in the first syntax, I'm not giving any name to a constraint. Okay, so if you don't give a name to a constraint, the query processor automatically generates a name to the constraint. The second syntax, I'm giving a name to a constraint. So the name is df underscore salary. And for that, I have to use a keyword constraint. So constraint name, default of 30,000. Okay, so that's the concept. And next is here. This is on the this is at the time of creating a table. I want to assign a constraint on a column of an existing table. Okay, so normally constraint is a column property, right? So when you want to assign a constraint on any column, okay, of an existing table, that is nothing but modifying the table structure. So to modify the table structure, we use the alter command. So alter table employee. So constraint is a column property, right? So add constraint, constraint name, let me use some random name, and default. So I'm just giving some value. On which column you want to assign this? On salary rate. So first salary. So this is the way to assign a constraint, default constraint at the time of, so that means on the existing table column. Okay, so we use the alter command because assigning a constraint on any column is nothing but modifying the table structure. So to do that, we use the alter command. If you observe the first two commands, create table and a create table employee and create table. Okay, so that means at the time of creating a table, if you want to assign, so we use that two syntax, either of that syntaxes. Okay, so the first syntax, we're not giving any name to the constraint. You don't give any name, so automatically the query processor will generate a name to a constraint. So if you want to give a name, so that is you can see that in the second syntax. Okay, now what I do here, let me drop this table employee. Okay, and let me execute this command. Okay, so command completed successful. Let me refresh the table folder. And when you expand this table, when you expand the const columns, and you can see that. And when you expand the constraint folder, and you can see. Did I get the constraint name?
Okay. I was
Okay.
confused before. Why are we
Yeah.
giving names to constraint? Okay, now I get it.
Yeah. So if you don't give a name, so automatically it will be generated. Okay. So, and if you want to give a name, so this is the syntax. Okay, to give a name to the constraint. Right. Now let us check its functionality. To check its functionality, we have to insert the data into table. Right. So right click on the table. So go to edit top 200 rows and just give the values 100. And for the second record, I don't give value for salary. For the third record, let me give a value for salary. Okay. And for the fourth record, I don't want to give any value for the salary. So if you observe, I'm not giving a value for salary, second record, and also fourth record. So normally, if you don't give a value for any column, it has to take the null value, right? And on the salary column, so there is a null constraint. So we expect a null value, okay, for that column of second record and fourth record. But now let me show you. Let me select the data from the table. And can you see that?
30,000.
Okay.
30,000.
Yeah. So that means it is replaced with the null constraint. That means the null value or empty space is replaced with the definite value. So that is because of default constraint. Is it clear?
Yeah.
Siberia, is it clear? Trinity. So next is here. That is the way to okay. So that is the way to assign a constraint on the column at the time of creating a table. Now I want, okay, I don't want the constraint on the salary column. I want to drop it. So I told you, right, constraint is a column property. So whenever you want to drop a constraint, so we have to use alter command. Okay, so this is the command for that. So alter table employee drop constraint. So constraint name. So this is the constraint name. So just copy it. Let me select this and execute it. So command completed success. Okay, and let me refresh the constraint folder, and you don't find the constraint. Now let me insert the data. When you re-execute that, find data properly. So 104. I'm not giving any value for the salary column. And let me select the data from the table now. So when you execute that, and can you see that? So we got the null value because there is no default constraint on the salary column now. I dropped that constraint. Okay, so that's the concept. Clear? Now I want to assign the constraint on the existing table column. Okay, so I want to assign the constraint, okay, on existing table column. So let's see how to do that. So I told you that we need to use the alter command because I need to modify the table structure. So assigning a constraint on any column is nothing but modifying the table structure. So to modify the table structure, we use alter command. So alter table employee. So add constraint. So constraint name, and the keyword is default. And let me give 40,000 here. On which column I want to assign? On salary column. Okay. So let me select this and execute it. And can you see that command completed successful? When you refresh the constraint folder, and when you expand this, and can you see?
Salary.
So this you can see the name. So that is the name I gave to the constraint. Now to check its functionality, let me insert one more record. Okay. Now let me select the data from the table employee. And can you see that? So what is the value now?
40,000.
So that means, so that is a way to assign a constraint on existing table column. And now the default value is 40,000. So if you don't give any value for a column, so automatically it will be replaced with the different value. So that is the use of a default constraint. Okay. Any questions?
Naga.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Tell me. Yeah. Tell me. Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Tell me. You're asking something.
Yeah. So when we had the constraint and the null value went to 30,000, after we dropping, it is stayed, and now we have a new constraint and the new value. So how are we gonna figure it out? It doesn't change it to null value once we drop
Which one?
on the table. Once you do the select file.
Hmm.
Those employee ID 101 30,000, that null value before one the constraint, it is still there, right? So once we drop that,
That is permanent.
that's permanent. Okay.
That values are permanent. Okay. We
Okay.
can't change them. For the new records, we get the default values of 40,000.
So we cannot do anything on that one, right?
Yes. That
Until
data
we
is permanent. Yes.
permanent.
And if
So
you want to use the update command to do changes. Yeah.
okay, got it.
Then why didn't we get on number 5, salary? Since you
Because
did a default.
I dropped the constraint, right?
Yeah.
So I dropped the constraint. Then after dropping the constraint, I assigned. I didn't give any value for the salary column. Okay, for this record. This record is after dropping a constraint. I inserted this record after dropping a constraint. Okay. So there is no default constraint on the salary column. So
No,
that's
I
why if
know,
you
but
want to,
you made it like after 40,000, when you made 40,000, how come it didn't go into 104, or it doesn't go in the previous one?
because this is permanent, right? This is permanent. These values are permanent. We can't change them.
Okay. It only goes into the new ones?
Yeah. So from the new one, we get the default values of 40,000.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Simple. So this is the default constraint, and not null constraint. So next is unique key constraint. So unique key constraint means when you want to restrict the duplicate data going into your column. Okay, when you want to restrict the duplicate values going to your column, and if you want to check the uniqueness of the column, okay, column values, so we go for the unique key constraint. Okay, so we have primary key constraint. Primary key constraint also have the same functionality. It is used to check the uniqueness of the column values. Okay, but the difference here is unique key constraint will allow a single null value into the column. That means it allows a single null value. So whereas the primary key constraint doesn't allow even a single null value into the column. Okay, so both are used to check the uniqueness of the column values, but the difference is unique key constraint allows a single null value, whereas primary key constraint doesn't allow even a single null. Okay, so let's see how we do that. I'm using Alt command. I don't want to drop the table now. So, and I want to assign this unique key constraint on the employee ID. Actually, there is a not null constraint, right? Let me change that to null, because I want to show you how it allows a null value into a column. Okay, so let me change that to null. So that's a command. Let me select this and execute it. So let me refresh the column folder, and you can see that. Okay, don't find a null constraint, not null constraint employee ID. Now let me assign the unique key constraint on that. So alter table add constraint. So just give some constraint name. So that's the name I'm giving. You can give any random name. Okay, so that is the name, and the keyword is unique. And on which column I want to assign this? I want to assign this on the employee ID. I want to assign this constraint on the employee ID. So specify the column. Okay, so let me select this and execute it. So command completed successful, and when you refresh the keys folder, you will find the constraint name, unique key constraint name on the keys folder. Okay, now what I do, let me insert okay, so what I do here is I don't want to insert any data, so let me update it. So there is an ID 102, right, and there is an ID 103. What I want to do is I want to replace this 103 with 102. Okay, so that means I want to make it duplicate. So let me change it. I'm updating it, and can you see? So violation of unique key constraint, cannot insert duplicate key in the object employee. The duplicate key value is 102. So got a message, got an error message. So when you're trying to give a duplicate data for that employee columns, so we get an error like this. Okay, so now that means it allows only unique values. When you try to give a duplicate data, it restricts the transaction, but it allows a single null value. So let me show you. If you observe, I'm not giving any value for the employee ID for the 7th record, and okay, can you see that it allowed the null value? But when you try to insert null value again into the employee, so that becomes the duplicate, right? So the basic property of unique key constraint is restrict the duplicate data. That's why it doesn't allow the single second null value. That means another null value to the column. So when you execute this, and you can see. Can you see that? So we got a null value. So that is a unique key constraint. So it will check the uniqueness of the column data, but it allows the okay.
So unique key allows one single null value.
Yeah, it allows only a single value. So that is the unique key constraint. Simple. Okay. And when you assign a unique key constraint on a column, so by default you will get an index. Can you see that? So unique non-clustered index. Okay. So when you assign a unique key constraint on any column, so by default you'll get this index, unique non-clustered index. Okay. So index means when you want to fetch the data a little bit faster from a table. Okay. So index will help. Okay. Index helps us to fetch data faster. Okay, so from a table, from a column, like we have an index page for every book, right? So in the index page you will find all the concepts and page numbers with page numbers. Okay, if you want to go for a concept, okay, so directly you can go for the index page and check the page number for that concept, and directly you can go for the that page. If you don't have an index, okay, we have to search every page to find the concept, right? So there the performance increasing, right? So we are finding if we have an index page, so it is easy for us to fetch the data quickly. If we don't have index page, we have to search every page to get our cons, to check the page which has a concept. The same way here also. So index means it will fetch the data a little bit faster from the table or from the column if you assign index. And here, when you assign a unique constraint, you'll get by default unique non-cluster index on that table. Okay. So this is important when you go for any interview or a certification. Maybe there's a chance of asking this question. Okay. So this is about our constraint. So please go through this. So tomorrow let us complete our constraints and we'll discuss the data models tomorrow.
So for the question for the unique key and then the not null value, so they're both basically the same, right? They're just two different ways of inserting null. Basically, is that I'm just trying to get the difference between the unique.
Not null actually. It restricts the null value. Okay, it restricts the null value going to a column, but it allows the duplicate data into a column. Okay, whereas the unique key constraint, it restricts the duplicate data going to a column, but it allows a single null value.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
Okay. Got it.
Right. So this is about the constraints, and let us see check constraint and other constraints in the next session. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So these constraints are very important for data integrity and also for data modeling. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Srinidhi, is it clear? Any questions?
Yeah, there are too many things, so I'm gonna go through your recording one more time. If I have anything, I'll send you email.
Yeah, I'll explain very slowly. Okay, just go to that.
Okay.
So Ahmed.
Yes.
Good.
I have the same. Like I'm gonna go through you.
Yeah, you missed some concept. Just go through the recording, and if you don't understand, let me know. I'll explain in the next session. Okay.
Got it.
And now for the Tableau, we have to have detailed information, whatever keys we are doing right now.
No. I told you right. This is not all useful for Tableau. Okay.
Okay.
So because this is my interest to explain your SQL. Okay. Because maybe in the interview there is chance of asking questions on SQL also. Even if you go for Tableau, definitely they will ask you questions on SQL.
Okay.
Okay.
Naga,
So,
I have one more question. Like whatever program you just execute over here, so how we can see output of this program? How we can see the output?
Which one?
Like whatever you just you just did right now.
Are you asking code or internal code or output?
Output.
Yeah. Just this is the we are adding a constraint, right? So once you add a constraint, just refresh the table folder and check this. You'll find the name of the constraint, that folder. Okay. And to check the functionality, just try to insert the data.
I got it.
That's it. Okay. So this is the concept. So let us discuss other constraints. Tomorrow's constraints are very important. So, and we use that constraint for data modeling also. So we'll discuss it tomorrow's session. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.